Here is a recruiter confession. There is one consistent trend that I see amongst interviewers that is ultimately costing them the job. And no, it's not beating the applicant tracking system. And no, it's not missing out on networking with the right people. In fact, it is something that you have so much more control over. So if you are ready to stop the song and dance of interviewing and fix the one thing that trips people up the most in interviews, you're going to want to watch this video. But before we get to it, my name is Kim. I am a big tech recruiter and career advancement expert. I help professionals make more money without all the stress or confusion. So if you're ready to make more money, please subscribe to my channel. The main thing that is costing you the job as an applicant in this job market is under preparation. As the person who was on the other side of that Zoom call during the recruiter phone screen, and as the person who receives people's applications, and as the person who has to let you know that you didn't get the job, the thing I consistently see in folks who were so promising on paper was a lack of preparation for their interview, which is so unfortunate. But the silver lining is that is something that is absolutely controllable. And we will talk about the most effective ways to prepare for interviews today. I remember when I first graduated from college and I was first looking for a job, for some reason, I was under the impression that it was not good to prepare for interviews. I thought it made the conversation seem stale, too over rehearsed, and I thought that I had the skills that would actually land me a job. And while I did ultimately get employed, I have to say, I probably would have taken less time if I had understood the art of interview preparation. So I want to address any sort of misconception out there that preparing for an interview actually makes you sound like a robot. I still, today, from time to time, get candidates who will say things like, I don't like to prepare for interviews, or it makes me sound too robotic. And if you are memorizing responses word for word, then yes, it will make you sound like a robot. Or if you are reading a teleprompter from an AI bot, yeah, if you're reading from a bot, you will sound like a bot. That's probably a given. You don't want to do that. Instead, this is the way that you want to approach preparing for interviews. The first is with a workback plan. I love myself a workback plan. So if you are called in for an interview, you want to guess or assume which questions that are going to be asked. Now, sometimes an interviewer will give you topics or practice questions ahead of time. I do that for my candidates all the time. I tell them I don't know the specific questions that are going to be asked because I don't, but I do send them preparation materials and topics to prepare for either in an email or on a call. So your recruiter may do the same thing for you. Now, if they don't, that's okay because they don't have to. It's okay for you to ask if there's specific topics to prepare for. Just say something like, I am so excited about this opportunity. Thank you again for considering me. I'd like to invest a little bit of time in my interview preparations. What are some topics that you think I should prepare for? If you see my previous content, you all know how recruiters get paid. So recruiters are rooting for you. They want you to get the job because they want to fill the job. They want the interview to go well so that their hiring manager is happy, their recruitment manager is happy, and you are happy. If everybody's happy, then the recruiter is happy. As someone who's been doing this for almost 15 years, that's the formula for happiness, I gotta say. So, step one, Check in with the recruiter. Are there any topics or pieces of advice in regards to interview preparation? Next thing, if you don't get anything from the recruiter, or if you don't get very much, which is possible, you might not, the next step is to turn to AI. Now, I must warn you, there are some companies where use of AI during the interview process, unless it's a designated AI coding section or you're supposed to be using the tool, any sort of AI in the interview process is disqualifying behavior. So if you're using AI to give you answers to the questions while interviewers are asking you that in real time, you're going to sound like a robot. And you're going to give generic responses that use the fancy words but aren't saying anything. It's just like when people overly use AI in their resumes. They say all the fancy words, but you don't actually say anything. You don't actually give any content, any context as to why you would be the right fit for the job. So if you're going to use AI, don't use it in place of your own accomplishments. AI is not to replace you. AI is only to help you. So how do you use AI as you prepare for interviews in an effective way? Find the job description of the role that you're interviewing for. It's usually in the portal or whichever dashboard that you've applied to within that company. If you absolutely need the job description again, you can ask the recruiter for it and they'll send it to you via email or they'll show you where to find it. Once you have that job description, upload it into an AI bot and then ask, if you were an interviewer for this role at this company, what interview questions would you ask me? And then it will spit out some interview questions. These may or may not be the ones represented in the interview, but it's likely that they will be similar to some of them, and it's a good jumping off point. You can then use those as prompts to help you come up with your own examples. That's the difference. This is a prompt to help you come up with your own examples. That's what makes someone stand out in an interview. And that's how we know whether someone prepared for the interview or just phoned it in. Once you have your interview examples ready, now it's time to practice. Now, Kim, we talked about not memorizing your responses. We don't want to sound like a robot, and you don't. That's absolutely right. But what you're doing is you are practicing these answers out loud to build some muscle memory in your mouth. Practicing your interview questions out loud gets you used to saying that story, sharing that experience out loud in that way. You want to practice them in the STAR method as well. And there's another video on my channel about how to use the STAR method effectively. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. Reason that practicing your responses out loud is a strategic advantage for you is you have now built muscle memory in your mouth. And your stories or work experiences that you're sharing will then feel familiar as you tell it in the STAR format. When I taught Introduction to Public Speaking when I was a graduate teaching assistant, I used to tell my students all the time to treat their speech preparations like speech day. You want to treat your interview the same. You may not know every single variable for your interview, but you know quite a bit. You've already talked to the recruiter, so you know how long the interview is going to be or how many rounds there will be and roughly the length. You also know the topics that will be covered because you've asked or you've used an AI tool. Now that you know the time and the topics and you know the STAR method framework, you can practice your responses in that STAR method framework within that time frame. So then when the interview day comes and you're asked a question, that closely aligns to one of those responses, you can either alter your response to answer the specific question being asked, or you already have something that you've written that's tailor made. Here is the hack. If you want to look extra prepared, come to the interview with notes. Bring a nice notebook and a few pages with your notes written out with those work experiences that you have prepared to reference. I would also come with a blank sheet of paper and a pen to take notes as you ask the interviewer your questions. Remember, this is a mutual selection process. Now, if you are interviewing online, so a Zoom call or a video call of some kind, notes should still be allowed. Now, confirm with the recruiter, regardless of whether it's an in person interview or a video call, whether you can have notes or not. But I would have notes prepared on a video call as well. This is the difference. I would personally encourage you not to have your notes stored on a second screen if you're doing a video call, because it can give the impression of reading from an AI bot. So if you are choosing to have notes, do it old school. Print it out on a piece of paper or have it handwritten and tell the interviewer, oh, let me reference my notes before you answer their first question. Having notes prepared in advance shows interest, shows care, shows attention to detail. It shows that you want the job, and it shows how you'll be when you're doing the job. Wow, this person was prepared for the interview. They're going to be prepared for the meetings too. This is your time to shine. The best part about all of these tips are this is all what's in your control. Folks, I know when you are looking for work, there is a lot of this process that's not in your control. So, doubling down on the parts that are in your control is part of your strategic advantage. And then when the interview is done, you can go home and hold your head high because you gave the best interview that you could. The rest of it is outside of your control. As the recruiter, I can tell you it's even outside of my control. I'm just there as the hiring expert. The ultimate decision maker is the hiring manager. Just know, even if you prepare and you're not selected, you've still done a good job in the interview. And that recruiter noticed, and that hiring manager noticed, and more often than not, that team, and certainly that recruiter, is going to have more opportunities that come across their desk that might also be a good fit for you. So just know that interview preparation is both the short term game for that role, but also the long term game for future roles. You want to play both hands well in order to land a job in this job market, I can say. Thank you so much for watching this video. I post twice a week about tips to find a job, and I would love to see you back here again. So please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. God bless and happy job hunting. Bye bye.